Hey everybody, welcome to Drive-Thru Review 824. Today we're going to talk about the Warhammer Quest 1995 edition. This is the fourth video I've done on this game, dedicated to this game anyway. The last video that I did on the channel was my top 10 solo games, like as of right now. And my number one game, spoiler, if you haven't watched the video, is this game. And I will put a link to that top 10 solo game video below. And I'll have a whole bunch of links to a lot of other stuff as well. What I did mention in that video was I wanted to go over some of the new stuff that I received for this game, because I've mentioned this in other videos, but there's a fellow by the name of Little Monk. That's his online username. I don't know what his real name is. But he has been creating and designing and helping get printed many supplements for the Warhammer Quest 1995 edition since about 2010. So it's been almost 20 years since he's been doing that. And I'll have links to his Facebook page and his website and all that stuff below. And I've talked about his stuff in the past. So before I go any further, I just want to emphasize this, because everything that I'm going to show you here, you can get for free. You can download it and print it out yourself. But the stuff I'm going to show you now is he will do like a print run every so often of different components. There's cards, there's books, there's tokens, there's map boards and stuff like that. And he'll do a print run, so he'll get people together and then everybody will kind of chip in, and there's no profit, according to him, when I believe him. So, because he's been doing this for a while now, for a few years, and he's done several runs, and I'm always active on that channel or on the Facebook page, and people just, really enjoy his stuff and they love it. And it's just really kind of a very unique thing, I think, within the hobby in general, that a game that is 31 years old now is receiving 30 years later the level of quality and care and all that stuff from a fan, basically, and just the breadth and the depth. I know those words are sort of spongy, but you'll probably get the idea when we go down to the table and look at it. But the breadth and the depth of like what has been created here. So I'm going to go through a lot of stuff here, and then talk a little bit about kind of the plug and play nature of this, and how you can kind of use these components in various kind of different ways to sort of customize your experience. So once again, everything you can get is free, and some of the stuff I've printed out, over the course of time, which I've talked about before, and I'll have links to like all of my old Warhammer Quest videos and some of the components and stuff like that you could print out, and then of course to Little Monk's sites and everything. But I do want to kind of highlight like all of the different things you can kind of like baby step yourself into, because I think once with camera switches to over there and we show the table, you're like, oh my god, that's so much stuff. But you don't have to do it all at once, right? So if you have the game, or you want to like piece, I've talked about before, like piecing together the game yourself, printing out some of the books or making your own map tiles and stuff like that. So I think it's worth it if you want to do it that way, or if you can find a reasonable copy. But the price of like the original copies is just it's too much. I think it's too much these days. It's gone up insane amounts in the last 6-7 years or so. So I wouldn't recommend actually hunting on eBay. I mean, if you have the means, obviously go for it. But the tricky part is the models, but those can always be proxied pretty easily. So anyway, let's go down to the table, and I'll give you kind of a walkthrough of everything that he sent me, and just go through it. Okay, I realized that I probably should hang the camera from my ceiling. So the main focus is going to be a lot of these character books, which I'll show you, a lot of these cards. So he sent me all these cards, all these character books, as well as some more of these supplementary books here, which I've talked about some in the past, but I'll show you the ones that I haven't shown you before there. And so the main thing I want to talk about here, first let's start with the cards. We're going to end up with the character books because I think that is just the coolest thing ever. So let's take a look here. So I've sort of divided these up. So for example, here we have Treasure Pack 1. And so this is the same Treasure Pack 1 set of cards that you could have gotten in the past as like a little expansion. So Games Workshop released, I believe, Treasure Pack 1 and Treasure Pack 2. Some of this stuff I might be mistaken because it's a little bit of memory and this stuff's old. So those you could get, and those I've actually already printed out from Make playing cards myself several years ago. And so one thing to note about that is some of the cards that I've printed out, I just for fun kind of mixed them in with the cards that he sent me and he prints. And I think he uses Make playing cards too. I'm not 100% sure about that, because he does put together kind of like a large bulk order for however many dozens of people. They do mix nicely, and I do have some cards that I have that he doesn't provide, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But they all mix together great because they've all got the same card backs. We're all using the same stuff there. So if you have made some stuff with Make playing cards or something else like that, it should work just great with the stuff that he has. And so you've got Treasure Pack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so as far as I know, 3, 4, 5, 6 are his creation. And they go along with this Ultimate Treasure Book, which I showed in, I think, the previous video. And so he has some really cool rules and things like that in here, or just options for rules. And you're going to see here, obviously, the great graphic design and layout and stuff, and really keeping with the motif and the overall user experience that feels like it's basically a Warhammer Quest product from 1995. But before I sidetrack too much, there's a lot of cool rules and stuff and ways to tier out your treasure cards. So let's just grab for fun Treasure Pack 6 here. So if you know the game, you've got these objective room treasures. These all have like a red title there. And then you've got your normal dungeon room treasures that you'll get over the course of any random adventure. These objective ones are sometimes specific to certain adventures, or some are just generic, but these you get for basically beating the scenario. You get a shot at those. And so one of the things that at least I've seen with the game is some of those objective room treasures, these nice red titled ones, they can be very powerful. So he's gone through and tiered them. And by tier, we've got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And so there's a recommendation here. So when you have gotten to battle level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then when you roll up on the different cards there, then you shouldn't get like a tier 3 at battle level 1, because that's just going to make you like way too powerful too early. And so it also talks about, though, either like rolling on these different tables for, you can pull up the treasure descriptions here, and there's some other like sort of FAQ type of information and that kind of stuff here. So you could roll up on tables within the book and go fish out these cards as a reference if you like, or you could actually just use the decks of cards to make the treasures unique. So in that case, once you pull a treasure out, then that's it. You'll never see that one again. So it gives you a couple of ways to do that. And there's like a hybrid mode between that. So you can kind of customize the game to your experience. You want to be able to refine the same treasure or similar treasures, or maybe the magic treasures are ones that you pull out and there's, you only get the one instance of it. So if you throw it away or sell it, you can't get it again because it's a unique item. So it gives you some really cool sort of guidelines in here that kind of go along with all these treasure cards for that as well, which will move us in kind of the next set of cards here. Before we move to that, what I'm going to move into is talking about the treasure cards that go with these different supplements. The other cool thing that he's provided here is these basic cards here, and these are just nice references, right? So these are some of like the starting things or stuff that you can buy in shops and stuff like that. So this is really cool to have as just sort of a reference, next to your player sheet, and you can just get a good sense of like what you've got on you. And so the example that I used, here we go, is these, you need a quiver of arrows. So every time you start an adventure, you need to have, go and buy some of these. And then this is basically spends at the end of the scenario. So there's just enough arrows to last for your adventure. and then you need to sort of rebuy for the next one. There's nothing really else to track with that. And so you can write that down and erase it, and write it down and erase it on your sheet, or you could just get the card and say like, oh, I've got it, and then discard it back. And it's just a nice little kind of reference. And that's something like, I mean, it's just my little proclivity with, you know, how I deal with things in my head, but just having this card is just going to be super cool. And so a lot of these other things, like, you know, just regular sets of armor and, you know, basic weapons and stuff like that, you can have here at the ready. So this is kind of a nice little addendum just as a reference type of thing there. But as I was talking about with the different treasures here, let's take, for example, here, this one. This is the Rise of the Goblin King. So this matches here, all of these Rise of the Goblin King cards, this supplementary book here. And I'll look at this in a minute. But if we take a look here, here is the different rooms that are specific to some of the scenarios that are in there. And then you have very specific events that will, you know, be more thematically tied to that supplement, and just some of the monsters and stuff that will be more thematically tied. And then also some special cards, like special rules, reference cards, things like that. And then getting down to the bottom here, there's a lot of them in this one, you'll have some of the treasure cards, like so. And so again, getting back to this Ultimate Treasure Book, this will give you a certain sort of ratio and way to set up your treasure deck based on how many treasure cards each of these different supplements sort of come with. So if you look here, not all of these supplements are necessarily equal, because you've got the Goblin one, you know, Castle of Darkness, all those different ones here. And so when you go to make up your treasure deck, you want to have some treasure that is sort of specific to the theme of the sort of the adventure that you're currently on. So the rules in the treasure book give you a way to kind of shuffle some of these in with some of the just, you know, more generic treasure out of some of these different treasure packs. So it's pretty cool, because the game can start to get, you know, a little bit overwhelming and unwieldy as you kind of sort of add these little components to it. So it's nice to have those little guidelines, you know, from that treasure book, and just have those extra things in there so you can keep the thing, you know, somewhat on the rails as you play through it. Talking about one of these supplements here, and this is one of the newer ones that he's created and he just sent me. And so this is the Rise of the Goblin King. We were just looking at the deck for that. And so we can just take a look in here. And so the cool thing about this are they give you kind of suggested miniatures, which you can go try to hunt down on Troll Toad or various different websites. Here's some of the different map boards that you can get. And he has all of these files for, you know, when you go on the website, you will have, you know, you can download this and print this out. And then you can download the files for this, for these, and print these out to kind of go with some of the different objective rooms and things like that. And then let's just go in here. And so here's just kind of some explanation of the different types of models you can use, sort of how the book's broken down. And all the supplements are a lot like the official expansions. I mean, if you didn't know any better, you might just think this was an official expansion. And he talks about some of the future stuff that's coming for some of these, which I'll get to in a minute. And so, again, basic, you know, ideas for laying out, just great use of artwork and design. They just look amazing. All kinds of lore and background and all this kind of stuff. And then we start to get into some of the special characters that you might run into. Again, remember the decks have all of these cards. So the different rooms, here's the 3 rooms, right? And then here's some of the events that are themed up for it. And here's some of the different monsters that can be in there, and then some of the different boss monsters will be in here. It's like this guy here, Grubnub, the Goblin King. So this guy here. This is the Zonk, the Goblin Shaman. So these would be some of the, you know, special main bosses that you can fight in here. And so a lot of the special rules, they're a little bit more involved with some of these named characters. And here's some more here. And then here's the adventures. There's always 6 adventures, just like the main game and the original expansions, objective room tables and so on. And then, you know, just kind of how we work through those. Now, a lot of these are going to tie back into the Ultimate Adventure Book. And so what this does is this allows you, when you visit a town, to sort of procedurally generate some different scenarios and stuff, and kind of flesh out and develop out a little bit more the town visiting and that stuff, make it a little bit more of a role-playing game type of idea. And some of them will tie directly into some of these supplements here. But they'll have a lot of the descriptions and stuff like that there, and there's even a lot of special map boards and stuff that are made just for some of the adventures that are in here as well. So we go through here in the back. So if you notice here, oh yeah, they always have a nice reference here. If you notice here in the front, there's a coming soon table of contents. Now, I don't know, and maybe he'll say so, but he has so many of these. Let me just show you real quick. So here is a whole stack of these, and these are the ones I showed you last time. All of these different books. It's Chaos Dwarves, Skaven. This is kind of a ghost one. Here's a Slanesh one. Here is a Khorne one. Here is a orc, like a, what do they call these? Savage Orc, Realm of Savages. Carnival of Carnage, sort of a Chaos one. Beastman one. This is sort of a Manor of the Spectre, some kind of undead one. Castle of Darkness is sort of a fun one with the different sort of Dracula and stuff like that. And then there's some settlement and different ones like there. So then now we've got the Goblin one, but he created a while ago this Dark Elf one, which is like a full-fledged one. So you can see this one is a little bit thicker than the Goblin King one. So the thing that this one has is some of these role-playing scenarios that are in the back here for doing, like, you know, sort of a DM'd RPG type of thing. There's a lot more scenarios and things like that here. And then there's also here the sort of scaling tables to add monsters that are all themed Dark Elf monsters. Very similar to the advanced rules, which are here. And this is an original one here. This is not a, you know, printed one that came with the game. So this is the roleplay book. So if you remember in here, this has all of these tables here. So as you start to level up, you know, you start to want to increase the difficulty. And so this has a Dark Elf theme one. And so this, out of all of those supplements I just showed you, this is the one where he's basically fleshed out to be totally all-encompassing, complete. Like it's got, you know, all the way up to level 10, role-playing scenarios, all that stuff. Now I do not know, I can't imagine, but he's been doing this for a while, that he's going to do that with every single one of these. You know, build out the tables, the role-playing scenarios. Each of them says they will. I've not asked him because I feel like I'd be pestering and pressuring him to do it. I think it would be awesome, but it's like, man, that would just be so much work to do it. So all of these other ones that I'm going to show you, like I'll just show you this one here. This is one I'm excited about because I have a lot of Tzeentch models. Labyrinth of Deception. Here's a Nurgle one. These are new ones that he sent me. Pits of Revulsion. And then here's a Dwarf Mines one here. And then also Ocean Travel, which fleshes out, basically was like kind of a one-off in, I think it was a White Dwarf or Town Crier or that type of thing. So it's adding some fleshed out things for that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But so I don't know if he's going to, you know, flesh out all of these. Let me just show you just in some detail, a little show and tell here with the Labyrinth of Deception, because I'm always kind of a Tzeentch guy. Here's some Tzeentchy Beastmen. And Tzeentch guys always have these little moon faces. Although sometimes Night Goblins have those too, I think. So here's a couple of the tiles that are being there, some suggested miniatures or miniature types, and some background and stuff, some cool art. Some of the named characters and bosses and things like that. And I'll show you the deck of cards that goes with it here in a minute. So here we go. So we got some different scenarios and all that stuff. So there's no, you know, level charts all the way up to level 10. There's no role-playing scenarios yet. But I don't know that you really, I mean, there's so much that you can do with this in terms of setting this up, and I'll talk about that in a second. But let's look here at here's this set of cards here to go with this. So here again, you've got the different rooms. You've got here some of the event cards that are specific. You've got some of the monster cards that are specific. And then you have some of the special, you know, reference cards for different bosses and things, some of the specific treasure cards, and then this particular one has a mechanic of mutations. And you can see here's kind of like the is it D12? I'm not sure what the probabilities are, but you can see the die number here, or maybe it's just an assignment. But I think these are, the way this is laid, I think this is laid out for like per character. Yeah, so there's like 4 sets of these in here. So as you get mutated going through here, there's this, you know, the set of cards to go with it. And so there's a lot of that in a lot of these different sets here. So that's pretty cool like that. Now the trick of it is, as you level up, and I showed this before, but I'll show you a couple of them now. So here I've got some decks that I printed, and these here are a couple of things. They are the tables that I was just showing you earlier. So remember, you've got the tables level 1 through 10 in the roleplay book there. And then also Little Monk developed the similar table here for the Dark Elf Adventure Pack. And so instead of like rolling on these tables here, like so, and trying to fish out, like, do I even have these miniatures? You know, how does this work? So I went through and printed out and actually created some of the cards here. So this is my level 1 set here. So you can see here's the level on all of these, right? And so these are these ones that I have. Yes, they are. So I printed out everything, but I put it in here like this, so that when I want to go make a deck now, let's say we were fighting here in the Tzeentch world, and let's say it was like level 5 and I grabbed my level 5 deck. So I would grab some of the monsters out of here and some of the treasures out of here, and then grab some random sets of treasures out of the generic pack, and grab some of the generic event or the themed events here. And then I also have the roleplay events here printed out. So these are all, because in the roleplay book there's a whole this huge amount of events right in here. So I could you can kind of mix them in here and sort of act as your own kind of dungeon master here to see how specific you want to get. Because you could roll with it like, you know, I'm just going to use all the cards out of here, just only monsters and events out of the themed deck, or if I want to mix in some stuff here, or as I level up, you know, because these are kind of more sort of every level sort of setups in here. But I mean, if you get to level 5 by some miracle, then you can sort of grab cards out of your level 5 deck and then sort of mix them in. And the nice thing about printing the cards, which I'll have links to all this stuff below, is that since I've set these decks up, basically I know I have miniatures for all of these. I don't have any miniatures for these cards, so I just keep these sort of flipped up and then put these on the top. Then I know, okay, so I'm going to randomly draw cards out here, and I know I've got a miniature laying around on a shelf or in a box for these. And so I've printed out the again, for all the cards and all the charts for the Dark Elf book from Little Monk, and then all of the stuff in the roleplay book. And so yeah, so you're ready to go. And you know, these are generic, but I have plenty of like Tzeentch models in here too. So if we get up to like, let's say I was at level 6, and so I grab some of these out of here, and then I could go through my level 6 deck, find the Tzeentchy ones out of there, and then put them in there. So, you know, it'll be sort of like you have some easy encounters, but then you have some really kicky in the face ones as well. And so that's kind of what I was talking about with the plug and play stuff, with sort of theming your events and stuff. And so what that starts to really do is flesh out this whole world, because you're gonna have all these different sort of monster types and boss types and encounters and you know, tile types and all that stuff, and flesh it all out. And then when you go back to town here to the, you know, visit the Ultimate Adventure book, you'll be kind of running around, maybe bumping into people at the tavern or at the Warriors Guild, or some weird character on the street shows up, and those kinds of things will be in here. And so that might spin you off on an adventure to go into these different areas. And then sort of as you sort of start to collect and add miniatures and things like that, you know, for these different things, then you can start to add these, you know, into the game. So it's really cool to have all of this kind of stuff. So some of the other things, we'll talk about some cards for a minute, and then these other cards will feed into these character books. So we'll get to that. Before we do that, I want to talk about one deck of cards, because I kind of mentioned that in this a minute ago. So these are sort of a one-off for now. These are Temple Prayer cards. And so this is a D66 deck. So you can 31, all the way up here. And so what these are is sort of an enhanced version of, and I think it's a D6. It's in the role play book. So when you visit the temple, you can get like a little temple blessing or a prayer and type of thing. But there's only like 6 of them, you know, in the original base game. So not a lot of variety there. So Little Monk's been developing, he shared with me the PDF for this. And so at some point he's going to create a special locations book or set of supplements, and then also some cards to go with it. So these are to go with the prayer. And I'll show you just some of these here. So I have some of these that are printed out. Animal Trader, Gunsmith, Apothecary, Chaos Temple, you know, different ones that have been around for a while. Dwarf Guildmasters. Some of these are out of White Dwarfs and other supplements that came out from Games Workshop long ago. Gambling Den, you know, all this kind of stuff. So I don't know which ones, you know, he's going to decide to use and maybe tweak and balance a little bit. But, you know, one of them for sure is going to be, you know, the Temple. So this deck of cards, you know, goes along with that. Now the last set of things I want to talk about here are the different character decks, and then of course the little books, which we'll get to. So you can see we've got skill cards here for the Barbarian, the Imperial Knight. I forget all these guys because I don't have some of these. This is like the Treasure Hunter, I think. Here is like the Pirate, which isn't what it's called. The Warrior Priest, Witch Hunter, Assassin, the Pit Fighter, oh boy, the Ogre, this is the Imperial Nobleman. Oh, this is like the Noble Knight. Sorry, I get confused. There's a couple of elves up there, War Dancer, High Elf, and so on. There's a special named Lord over there somewhere. Now I've got 4 dwarves here, because you've got the Brewmaster, the Troll Slayer, the regular dwarf, and then like the Treasure Hunter dwarf, I think it's called. Who would I call the treasure hunter? Oh, this guy's not the treasure hunter. Sorry, he looks like the treasure hunter dwarf. This is the bounty hunter. So, yeah. So, the cool thing about these is, for example, here's the Barbarian, one of the basic characters from the base game. You don't need these decks of cards, but as you level up, as you can see here, you start with the Berserk skill. At level 2, you get Hunter's Eye. At level 3, you get Battle Blades, and so on. So these are all the skills you get as you level up. So that is pretty cool. And so it has that for each of these different characters here. Here's the Knight here. So those are all his skills. And also, for example, the Wizard, of course, is just a bunch of spells. And so he has taken that whole book of spells and just made it into a giant deck of cards, which is really fun. Because then you can be, you know, a little bit more wieldy as you start to get a lot of these in front of you. The other example I want to show you, oh yeah, here we go, is the Chaos Warrior. And so, for example here, now these are printed, these aren't the original, although they might look like it. So here's the Chaos Warrior character sheet here with the special rules, and then you have the starting attributes and starting artifacts like this. But then if you look at the book, which we'll get to in a minute here, here's the nice version of the book from Little Monk. But there's also, you know, the cards for those. So as you get these and sort of roll up and generate our attributes and artifacts, you'll be able to have these for these references. And I think there's 28 characters. So it's all the official ones, the official expansions, the White Dwarf ones, some fan ones. So, but over the years, there's been 28 of these that have been made. So I just want to show you a couple of these. And here's the stack of 28 of these books here. So here's the Chaos Warrior, which we were just talking about, which is one of my favorite. That's why I'm focusing on this guy. So the nice thing is, let me find here. So if you didn't want to get this, the cool thing is, so here I printed it out. And so these are floating all over the internet. All right, so this is what I have, is this giant spiral bound thing. You know, it's fine. It does a trick. But the cool thing about this is you can like give this to, you know, a player at your table, and they got this nice compact little booklet here that has all of the cool stuff that these things have. And this just really goes to show you how sort of like developed and just rich each of these different kind of characters are, beyond, you know, most of these kind of dungeon and crawl types of games. So here's the background, a little bit of an introduction to it, how to kind of use them, starting stats and equipment, some of the advanced stuff, what happens when you visit a settlement and so on. And then, you know, some of the special rules, because each of these characters is like levels up in a completely asymmetric way. They don't just like level up. You know, some of them have to go to a temple or go to a special elf troop in the woods if you're an elf, and all these different things. So it's all very specific here. And, you know, some of the rules for leveling up here. And then here, like I was showing you the deck of cards earlier, here's your reference for the attributes here, right in the booklet, laid out super nicely, with all the cool art and graphics and all that stuff. And then also the artifacts here, like so. And this is just all fleshed out in here. And then there's role-playing guidelines, and also the, you know, for the role-playing game, if you're gonna play that, you know, you get access to a lot of more of these different skills. And so these are sort of the baseline for that. So each of the books, you know, has those. And then here's the level up chart at the back, in terms of like how much gold or quote unquote experience you have, and some of the basic leveling up pieces. And that's on the back of all of these here. Now, some of these will have different sort of reactions to not just, you know, leveling up and special skills and abilities, and, you know, what they kind of do on their quests and their dungeons, but they'll have different reactions to things that happen in the settlements and things like that. So for example, the Bretonnian Knight, and this is in the original Bretonnian Knight stuff, here we go. When you visit the settlement, there's certain things that you can do, and you have like a whole like mini game of being a knight, and you know, jousting. There's a quest you can go on. There's like a grail quest, different types of quests you can go on, different types of things that are all having to do with you know, being a knight and all that kind of stuff. And then there's like a whole renown mechanic and stuff like that. But like, for example, so like it says, okay, when you do these types of settlement events, then this will be a little bit different for you. Because like, for example, you lose honor if you gamble. Whereas the barbarian here, he'll have a set of things that happen. So if you roll up an uneventful day, instead of having an uneventful day, since you're a barbarian, you're kind of a crazy person in this world, then, you know, here's a little supplement of extra things that'll happen to you. So it's not just like, you know, leveling up and abilities. It's like a whole like little suite of role-playing little avenues that you can go through in this. And we'll just take a quick look and kind of close the video out here. I'm not going to go back to my talking head, but here's the warrior priest one. That one looked out. This one's a lot of fun. This one is a little bit of a maligned character in my opinion. I kind of like this one, but everybody seems to think this is like one of the worst. I don't know. I had a good time with it. Now here's one that I'm very interested to try, the Kislevich Shaman. And you can see here, where'd it go? Here we go. So there is a whole ton of these blessing cards and things. So it's almost like having, it looks like having a wizard. There's a lot of different skills and abilities that you can get with that one. I don't have that one. I haven't played with that one. And I need to find a miniature. Oh, some of these, let's see if I can find it here. Does this one give you suggestions? Yeah, so it gives you kind of like suggested, you know, miniatures. Maybe you can go find these cheaply, because these are old. Probably metal miniatures. These could probably be had for like $5, you know, depending on where you get them from. But I mean, I've found stuff that is dirt cheap from some of these old ones. People like, you know, selling off their old armies and stuff like that. Like I got like, I don't even know what it was, like 30 or 40 dark elves for that dark elf book for like $25. It was crazy. And they were painted terribly, but they weren't painted in such a way that they were ruined. I just paint on top of them. It was fine. So this is cool that they have this kind of stuff in here too. This is an interesting one, Sisters of Sigmar. They've got their own deck here, which has, I've not looked into this one closely, but you get these different items, which are coffers, and then also these different sets of holy prayers. So you can get the cards and stuff like that. So it looks like this is one that you can kind of play in a few ways, because there's the one elf, I think it's the high elf. You can play as a very warrior focused or a magic focused elf. It looks like you can do something similar with this. Here is another elf, Lord of Anarion. And this is one thing I want to try as well, is because before I've run like a 3 elf and 1 dwarf party, but now I could run a 4 elf party or 4 dwarf party, which would be a lot of fun. Imperial Noble, this is another one that I really have enjoyed playing. Very kind of like fencing and, you know, dexterity, kind of plays like a rogue a little bit. That's a lot of fun. Halfling Elf, have not played with this yet. And the Ogre, which I want to play with. I've got several Ogre models. Oh, here it is. And this is not the pirate I was showing you earlier. It was the Sea Dog. This one looks pretty cool. And here is a Ronin Samurai, because remember, this is old world. So it still has some, you know, tropes and things like that you know, exist in sort of ancient Earth, so to speak, or antiquity maybe. Here's the Outlaw. Here is the Bounty Hunter. And here, of course, is the Wizard and all the spells and things like that. This is a little bit thicker of a book. So it's got all of that stuff in here. So this is really great, again, just to have in front of the player and have everything just in there and condensed and not sprawled all over the table. And you know, the basic dwarf, the basic elf, and all of the rules for these, of course, are in the main role play book. So you don't need to be digging through that. And this is a 30-year-old book, so who knows how long the binding is going to last on that. So let's move these out of the way. Here is it's not the high elf, it's the elf ranger. This one can be magic or warrior like. A lot of fun to play with. Also, the war dancer is a lot of fun to play with. I like that one quite a bit. This is a cool one. Like, it feels very like combo, in a way that you play it. Witch Hunter's cool sometimes. I don't know. It seems like they're very swingy, but I like the model, so that one's a lot of fun to play. Pit Fighter is also good. You know, it's just kind of another type of warrior with just some different mechanics. A lot of fun. This one, funnily enough, interests me quite a bit. This is one that I would not have like chosen to investigate, but I don't know, something about this just goes, oh yeah, right, this is Warhammer Old World. So an ex Blood Bowl player, and it's got its own deck of skill cards and all that stuff. So it could be a lot of fun. So we'll get into some of the dwarves here. Here's the Dwarf Brewmaster, which I've not tried. This is the Albion Druid, and the Druid's got a large stack of cards here with all these different things. And I always like playing Druids, so that one will be a lot of fun. Assassin, not played that. And then here's a Cathayan Monk. So another Asian character to go with the Samurai, which is cool. And then finally a couple of dwarves here. Dwarf Gold Hunter, not played with that one, but I have played with the Troll Slayer, and I did find that fun. So I do look forward to playing like a dwarf party or an elf party, or even like a ogre with a Blood Bowl player with a samurai with a bounty hunter type of thing. Anyway, so that's an overview of all of that stuff. Now you can get, sometimes these are not from Little Monk, but he does do prints of like the character cards, so this is kind of nice to have. Not necessarily, because you do have like these nice books. So I'm going to think about that, because I do like having these cards as a reference. Anyway, so you can get those as well, and you can get some tokens and things like that for like traps and webs and gold, and I don't know what else he does. He does do token stuff once in a while. And then finally, he does do these boards, and these are not from him, although some of the artwork is. These are ones that I printed myself, and some of these are just the originals, but I made them. And you can see you get these what's called like foam core from like the dollar store, and then just print on glossy paper, and away you go. And so then you just spray glue them on there. Here's a Little Monk one. You can see he's got his little symbol there. So that's, I think it's for one of the Dark Elf ones. Here's like a White Dwarf one. Just different things here. And he does print runs of these as well. And I think they're up to like 120 or 150 different ones. I've probably got like 25 different ones here. So, as you add the different themed regions and supplements and all that stuff. And usually they come with like 3 or 4 that you want to add, like so in here. You know, then you can just, you know, print these as you go. It doesn't take very long to make them, but you know, he does do print runs of these as well. So and I think those are quite hefty, and because it's a lot of cardboard and stuff. So anyway, that's kind of a show and tell there. Anyway, I talked a lot about why I really enjoy the game in my last video, which again will be linked below. But anyway, that is just some of the cool stuff that he has. Go ahead and check it out. And like I said, it's all free, and you can print it out yourself. Thanks.